we go. Another video and another Gaslands car build. This time we're building a full build on a car. We took a little Volkswagen Golf. I believe this is the car. And I've got a couple ideas on what I want to do. As you can see, I've already taken the car apart and dinged it up quite a bit. I've removed a door on the car, as you can see right there, with a hacksaw. My Dremel was burning up a little bit trying to get that door off, but I did get it off with a little bit of a hacksaw and some filing. So we got that door down, and I'm working with these Caesar miniatures. I believe they're 1/72 scale miniatures. They were like super cheap, like $10 a pop for the box, if that. Like I think they were less than $10. But I've got a modern warfare kind of figure. So like military, and then I've got some goblins. And so the modern warfare guy is going to be sticking out of the car, and the goblin is going to be the driver. And my theory here with this guy that we're working with is I'm going to paint him like a skin tone, and it'll look like he's wearing like a little goblin mask. So it'll look like a human wearing a goblin mask instead of a complete goblin. And I'm figuring, with this crazy world of the Gaslands that we play in, the goblin mask kind of fits right in. In fact, it's a little bit more sane than some of the other drivers, probably. I bet some of these other drivers get a little bit more unruly and insane. But as you notice, like I'm not really going to see the legs after everything's in. As you can see, here's kind of the beginning build. You don't see the legs of that little goblin guy, so I just chopped the legs off and glued them into the seat. I glued them in eventually. I plan on gluing them in. And so I've got a cup full of bits here that I'm just trying to figure out what else we need to go. And I found a little screw that looked kind of like an intake for an engine. So I said, why not just take some drill bits and drill a hole right down the center there and put that screw into that, which it created some issues, but it actually looks really kind of neat, like a big intake on the engine. So that little tensioning bolt kind of worked. But later on you'll see I had some issues getting it in because the bottom of that bolt actually hit the chassis of the car, so I had to do some modifications on the chassis of the car. But now what I'm going to do, I kind of wanted a little bit of a spoiler on the car, and so I had these little toothpick, kind of disposable toothpick things that you can see, and the design on the handle of those toothpicks kind of looked a lot like something you would see coming up from a spoiler. And so they worked really well for this, what I was going to do. And this spoiler went through a couple iterations. I left this part in just to show you kind of what we were doing. I thought I was just going to kind of do a straight piece of plastic straight across with a used gift card, but that ended up not working, and I ended up going in a different direction. But I kept this in here to show you kind of the whole process of trying stuff and knowing when to fold it, because it definitely wasn't working. After I got it kind of set and just kind of set it on the car, you'll see in a minute here that it definitely wasn't working. As you can see right here, it's just right about this point, I'm like, this isn't going to work, but I'm going to keep those little spoilers to see. I kept the sides to see what we can do and scrap that straight plastic piece, but we'll show you what went on later on. This next piece that I'm working with here, I'm going to cover up the door, so it looks like it has some pipes kind of just MacGyvered into the door, and they just kind of made their own door. That resin piece that I was working with was something that I did from the monster truck build, the little casting and resin video that I did earlier. That was the shocks from the monster truck I actually used as the door. And so right here, as I was saying, I had some issues with clearance and that little air header, the air intake thing, this bolt was hitting the chassis, so I had to cut a big chunk out of that to have it fit. And now it's just prepping these miniatures for paint. And so before I assemble the car and do a complete paint on the car, I wanted to kind of get these guys painted up and ready, because obviously we're going to need the driver painted before we assemble the car. And so there's the driver here, the half torso Goblin King. Maybe not the Goblin King. He doesn't look like David Bowie at all. Is David Bowie the Goblin King? Oh boy, I may have just really ruined my cred there. If it isn't, please drop the comments that he is not the Goblin King. I believe he is, though. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. We're working on this, the Modern Warfare guy. He's kind of sitting down. He was the perfect pose to be hanging out that window and just picking off drivers and unsuspecting spectators, I guess, to get those crowd votes. At first, when I was editing this video, I figured, well, I'll just speed it up and not really cut anything out to show you kind of really how slow it is of a process to paint these guys. But I'm assuming that anyone that's ever painted a 1/72 scale miniature knows the amount of time it takes to get these guys looking halfway decent. With the driver, I was a little bit more fast and sloppy. Again, he's going to be in the car, so even you're going to be able to see him, but you're not going to be able to see a lot of detail. So I was a little bit looser painting in the driver, just choosing my battles and helping them go a little bit faster, I guess. I even painted the goblin head flesh tone to begin with. And then I came in with some greens on top of the flesh tone, and it left a really nice kind of goblin-y flesh to him. But again, once the car's assembled, you can hardly even notice. With this guy here, the gunner that's hanging out the window, I spent a lot of more time with him. Boy, I don't even want to know how much time this took to paint. I think almost an hour plus. Just really small brush, slow going with some jeweler's kind of magnifying glasses. And I really was surprised at how well he came out. I didn't think that these little miniatures had a lot of detail, but after painting them and noticing the detail as I was painting them, the Caesar miniatures did really, really good. I'll drop a link down in the bottom of the comments to the Caesar miniatures that I used, if I can find them, on Amazon. If you can go ahead and purchase through those links, that helps kind of promote these videos that I do and gives me inspiration and kind of motivation to keep going, because these things take a lot of time to do. So any little bit of help that you can give the channel and give this give back, that would be awesome, to use those affiliate links in the bottom there. Again, you can see that we've started the green on the goblin there. He's got some green base tone, and then I came in with a highlighted kind of a brighter slime green. And after painting on my hand to make sure it looks good, I kind of did some highlights there. And again, he's kind of a little bit more sloppy. You can see the end product there. I finally gave up and just kind of cut to the end. And you can see kind of the detail on the miniatures a little bit better there. I like how the driver came out. I like that idea of the goblin mask kind of guy, even though, you normally you wouldn't find a goblin in Gaslands. These little goblin figures worked out really well. So here I am painting some mud splatter. You can see the full video on that quick tutorial that I uploaded a while back. Was actually painting this car in that video. So if you want to jump onto that one, I can also link that right here for you. But we're just painting some mud splatter and getting that together and painting some seats and just getting a little bit of the paint and the base coat done. Once the car's assembled, I do come back and kind of weather it a little bit. But I did want to get the majority of kind of the base colors down before I start assembling everything. And here we are starting to think about the assemble. I've got a 3D printed gas can there as well, but just kind of making sure this guy's going to fit and figuring out where that gas can is going to go. I'm not really sure at this point where we want to glue it on or where we want to have it added, and nothing really was calling me, so I just kind of set it aside and said, we'll figure that out later. really what I did. I almost mumbled that out loud myself. But we've got the goblin guy on. I'm going to make sure he kind of fits, and that arm, you can see that arm right there. I want to make sure that clearance is going to fit. I don't want to crush his arm once I get him in there, because I got to glue him, and then that top of the car is going to go in last, and so I want to make sure he's going to fit before I glue him in there. And that's really what I was concerned with right there, is making sure that clearance is going to be enough clearance for that arm and for that top to go down. And it looked like I was able to get it, so now it's time to kind of put some gloves on and break out the 5-minute epoxy and go at it. I love this 5-minute epoxy because it's a little bit thicker and it kind of helps fill some gaps, and it holds super, super strong. So super glue is great in some areas, but this 5-minute epoxy, when I'm gluing together cars, I kind of like it a little bit better because it's, as I said, it's thicker and it fills in some gaps and creates a really strong bond. This goblin guy, I kind of just rubbed him in the bottom there and dropped a drip in the seat and just kind of plopped him in there and just let him sit. And from there, I broke out the spoiler, I believe. Yep. I just spray painted those silver so they don't look like a toothpick anymore. And this is I ended up using a sprue from a model kit. It was just an excess sprue that kind of fit really well. And so I'm using a little bit of super glue to kind of tack it in place. And then I come back in with epoxy and just kind of paint the epoxy around the connection points to kind of create a better bond. But I think the toothpick and the plastic sprue, as you can see, it kind of fit really well together and actually came together really well. A lot better than that straight piece of plastic across. That sprue kind of gave it a little bit more extra dynamic kind of look. And there's our goblin guy that ended up looking a little bit like Yoda driving in the car. And I probably should have just painted a little bit of white hair on him and he would have been a Yoda, but it's neither here nor there. Too late, too little, too late. So prepping, as you can see, as I said, I super glued that there, and I'm using a little bit of a 5-minute epoxy to go around the edges to create a little bit more firm of a bond. And aesthetically it's kind of neat too, because it creates kind of a thick kind of goop around those edges, and it looks like it's just kind of a quick rush of a weld job. So like you normally would with these cars, you're not really thinking long haul for these cars. You just want to kind of get them welded together. And so it looked like it just a really kind of a quick, dirty weld job at the end on that spoiler. And so it fits really well with the aesthetics of Gaslands. So we are just what's left of those sprues. I kind of destroyed the sprue when I took that apart, but that little peg, but it's down, and we're getting that little intake tension bolt thing onto the car. Volkswagen. We're in, and then fast forward a little bit to adding the spoiler. And then even like there was like a model number on the sprue, which ended up looking kind of neat. So I kind of it worked really well to just add a little bit more detail to this car. I ended up liking this build, even though it's not like a performance car or anything that you would normally think of it. There's a lot of detail in this car that tells a story, I think. And it's really kind of what I really do like about this build is it tells a story, and it shows kind of gives you a little bit of background into the minds of the people that made this car. So now that they're glued together, I'm going to do a little bit more weathering. Now that everything's kind of in its place, I use a little bit of dirty, it's kind of a dirt color, and this is an oil color, like literally meant to look like kind of old steamed oil. It's from a Com Art weathering pack. Once I've got that down, I'm doing a little bit of rust. And so some dry pastel, and that's isopropyl alcohol, just rubbing alcohol. You mix those two together and kind of just shave the dry pastel into a dust, mix it with some isopropyl alcohol, and just paint it on. Use an old paintbrush. There's a good chance it'll ruin your paintbrush, so use an old paintbrush and just kind of paint it on and let it dry. Don't go too much, because once it dries, it's going to kind of add some more color. So go light at first and then just add more light touches as you go, because as you can see right now, it doesn't look like much, but once it's done, it actually that red kind of comes out a lot more. And I probably could have got a better rust color if I wanted to, using a different color of pastel, but this is really the end of the build here, and that's how it came out. So as I said, overall it was a fun build that kind of has a lot of character. It really tells a story. Instead of just making the car look cool, you can almost see kind of what that